Welcome, Bitcoiners. Welcome, welcome. Come on in here, fellas. Come on. We got lots to talk about. None of my stuff's working again. Same old thing. But I gave myself time. I didn't just assume the stupid iCloud would sync. I preempted them. So I got my files, but I had to backdoor what should be a simple system. That's okay. That wasn't the official sip. We're going to have the official sip in a second. That was just me having a sip of fresh coffee. But I'm going to wait for more of our breakup gang to join before I mention a little something that happened with the sun. It got up again. It came up again. Right? Morning, Robert. Good morning. Morning, Joe. Indeed. Good morning, CK. It is a glorious day, isn't it? Isn't it? Assalamu alaikum, Muslim Bitcoiner. Is the U.S. military slowing down de-dollarization? What could the worst threat to it? We'll talk about that. We got a bit of that going on today. We got a little bit of de-dollarization. I'd say we're not rolling in de-dollarization today, but we'll be talking about it. Where do I sats? Bon matin, good morning, and buenos dias, indeed. Sun is up. Yeah, well, you're taking away the tension, P-Man Van. Indeed, the sun is up. Guess what? Bitcoin is awesome and running, both at once. All that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. I just noticed a filter that allows all comments in the chat. Oh, yeah. I'm trying to get the thing to go so that we can preserve these chats into the thing, but sometimes it does it and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. We'll see. All right, everyone. So, boy, oh boy, is Moscow time pumped up today. Pumped. We got some awesome Moscow time. Here's what's up. CNN, we haven't talked about CNN enough lately. Here's one. So they are saying that the global rise of type 2 diabetes may be due to eating too much red meat. Too much red and processed meats, they say. Maybe processed. Too much red meat, red and processed meats, and refined instead of whole grains, according to a new modeling study. It's a modeling study. The science is telling us in their modeling study. So I went through and I read a bit of the modeling study, and all they say in the end is our modeling approach does not prove causation, and our findings should be considered as estimates of risk. Estimates of risk. They know all about the risk, these guys. It's a bunch of bullshit. I'm not going to tell you the whole study. It's too stupid. USA Today has a opinion contributor from Randy Weingarten. Now, we talk about Randy every now and again. Randy is the head of the U.S. Public Teachers Union, the Public Teachers Union, right? She's the one who said, well, no, we never caused any lockdowns for the schools. She says that publicly. She says it publicly. So here's her contribution in an opinion piece to USA Today, totally unbiased USA Today. MAGA Republicans are destroying our public schools. Teachers and parents must fight back. To effectively counter the extremists who wish to put their political vendettas and ideologies ahead of children's education, teachers need more people and groups to speak up. Well, thanks, Randy. One who is always speaking up is Corey DeAngelis. Corey will be joining us at Bitcoin 2023 in Miami, May 18th to 20th. He'll be running a session with Saifedean Amos and Daniel Prince. Daniel Prince, the What is Bitten podcast. I've been on that before. Great guy. He's a big homeschooler. So he's going to be hosting. And of course, Saifedean is also an educator, a homeschooler. And if you didn't know, in Saifedean's Fiat Standard, he actually cites Corey DeAngelis several times, so they know each other. And it should be pretty interesting. So Corey's got more thoughts on education than just limited to charter schools versus not charter schools. He's a big organizer. And he's been pointing out, Randy says it's time to speak up, right? Putting ideologies ahead of children's education. Well, Randy did her job really well. She is the teachers union, not the students union, right? She's not looking after a student. She looked after the teachers. She made sure they didn't get any nasty exposure to kids with masks. So she made sure all the kids had masks. She made sure that the teachers were protected. That's her job, right? We got to congratulate on her job. Here's the best one, though. I've saved the best for last as far as Moscow time. This one's awesome. This is from the Atlantic. We love the Atlantic. It is just such a golden and pure source of Moscow time. Here's what they say. Studies, more studies. This is another one of these studies, right? Studies show that millennials, despite a rough start, are now thriving financially. They're thriving, guys. They're having a great time. A myth. The title is "The Myth of the Broke Millennial." So, guys, if you got some millennials here, don't worry about it. Like, don't stress out. You're thriving. Studies are showing that you're thriving, guys. Don't sweat the little things like don't have a place to live, super stressed out. Don't worry about that. You're thriving. You can afford all the avocado toast you could want. Now, I wonder if the thriving millennials are also thriving, and that's why they're so happy in France right now. The millennials being such a rich generation, I wonder why they're out in such huge numbers. There were 280 protests last night in France in front of each town hall. And so if you look, Wall Street Silver shares a little map here. It's literally every major city in France had a protest last night. They burnt a lot of stuff, as they do. They threw a lot of rocks. They busted a lot of stuff, as they are generally inclined to do. So we've been talking a lot here about how Europe is undergoing serious changes right now, and they definitely throw a wrench into American plans about what's going to happen in Ukraine and what's going on over there. So it looks like Europe, right? France has already said, we had Macron last week within the context of all of these protests going over to China, talking about de-dollarization and saying the words out loud that no one has said since de Gaulle, since the 1960s and 50s in France. France is not a vassal state. They said it out loud. They said it out loud. We are not a vassal state. Don't have to listen to what's going on with don't have to listen to what's going on with America. So Wall Street Silver calling this the French Revolution version 2.0. Maybe. Now, I don't expect any of this stuff to stop. As I was mentioning yesterday, someone on the weekend was like, yeah, I'm going to France soon. I was like, I wouldn't go to France. I wouldn't go to France. If you guys want a good laugh, go watch the old Trump video on YouTube where someone remixed. Do you remember he had candidate Trump had a video or had a speech where he says, France? I wouldn't go to France. So it turned out someone made an actual movie, a song about it. They remixed it and put a beat to it. And I'm out of sync again. Huh? I wonder what the fuck is up with this shit. Pardon the swearing, team. Let me back in sync. Don't know. All right. Tell me if that synced me up or not. Let me know if I'm synced up again, if things are back in line. We don't want to be out of sync. We don't like out of sync. Out of sync, annoying. I'll read some of these comments. Seemed fine. Okay, pardon me. I see millennials buying mansions and yachts left and right. They're doing great, thriving by living under my hardware. Well, indeed. I'm not totally saying the second part of the headline. I'm not against. They said, what if the American dream is still alive, but no one believes it to be? I think the American dream is alive. As a Bitcoiner, I'm in this very hour will be predicting a golden age for America. A golden age. We are on the precipice of a golden age. So I think the American, I'm not surprised if it's still alive. And I have met a lot of wealthy millennials over time, but I wouldn't characterize their generation as wealthy. I certainly have met many, many wealthy millennials. That's true. Mostly peaceful protests in France. Okay, well, we're synced. Good. Okay, everyone's telling me we're good. American dream, very alive. Indeed, Brian. Definitely alive. Yeah, we're not saying it's not alive. Just characterizing this studies show that millennials are doing super duper great, right? It's a JP Conning study, I think. So definitely alive, guys. Yeah, optimistic. I'm super optimistic for millennials. Absolutely, millennial Bitcoiners. Yeah, I'm just pointing out that the Atlantic making this ridiculous argument uh, is funny. So now you've got France and all kinds of change, right? Tumultuous change going on. But here's even better, Germany, right? So Germany, we've been talking about shutting off the nuclear reactors for a little while, shutting off sources of energy, people celebrating what's going on about this. And I want to take a quote from Mike Solana, who just had it best, right? Mike Solana. Supposed to be coming to Bitcoin 2023, but he hasn't signed up the speaker link that I sent to him yet. But we'll see. He might show up at the last minute. Here's what he says. Can't stop thinking about this German nuclear thing. For decades, these guys have called Americans stupid, but it's not true. We're ignorant, okay. Are Sweden and Switzerland the same country? Maybe. Who cares? But you're burning coal now to save Mother Nature. That's dumb. And indeed, this is what's going on. Let me tell you what's going on. We get this from Mark Nelson. Mark Nelson says, the first night of Germany's grid without nuclear, it's bad. It's night, there's no sun, wind has dropped to almost nothing. Most of German renewables right now is richly subsidized bioenergy with half the net CO2 emissions of an efficient gas power plant, importing nuclear from France. It's astounding to me when people argue that it isn't fair to choose just a moment when Germany's wind and solar are near zero, that we have to look at yearly figures instead. So here's every single hour for a year and the annual average, and for France. So what he's talking about here is, basically they have to import anyway if they don't have the load balancing of nuclear energy, and sorry, the capacity of nuclear energy, not the load balancing. So. And he also mentions that in Germany, bioenergy is mostly corn, using 13% of their national farmland area, about 6% of the total area just for corn to burn for energy, both liquid fuels and biogas, heat, and electricity. So I also saw a map the other day that showed that America, with the soybeans and the corn, farm an area larger than India. India, the country of India. And if you plop India on an American map, it sort of fits between Saskatchewan down to Texas, which is our huge, in North America anyway, the breadbasket. And the breadbasket is just filled with all the garbage that goes into the seed oils and all that other stuff that we have been mentioning here about. We had some folks mentioning the diabetes story about red meat and all that stuff. So no grazing on those German pastures when they got the corn demand up high. So here's what he says. Last night was a lowest demand time of the day, low demand springtime. Industries are offshoring now. So they're losing their industrial capacity in Germany because they just simply can't afford the cost of energy. And now everyone is talking about how, oh, it's necessary. It's super necessary because if we don't lower the nuclear today, then we'll never have the incentive to build the wind turbines and the solar and the batteries and everything we need tomorrow. And Mark Nelson had one of the funniest jokes I've ever read in this context. It's amazing. It's Germany and the German mind in an absolute nutshell, right? It's amazing. So here's what he says. So remember, what everyone over there is arguing right now in Germany is that, or what all the people who read too much of The Atlantic and The Economist and Der Spiegel, what they're all talking about today is no, it's okay. Because with the nuclear gone, we're going to have to build other stuff. We're going to have to build it. And we're going to do it real soon. So now that the capacity's down, it's just a matter of time before we get everything up and running and we're going to be great. So here's what he says, Mark Nelson, on learning to fly, German style. I can lift 1 foot off the ground. That's half the battle, 50% to be precise, right? I'm almost there. Now, in some other future time, I'm just going to lift the other foot off the ground and boom, I'm going to be flying. That's their argument, right? That's their argument with this energy thing that, look, I can lift one foot off the ground. And as I told you, in like 2 years, I'm just going to lift the other foot off. And then I fly. It's going to be great, right? So 1 foot off, wait. 2 feet off, you're flying. Germans know how to fly. They invented it. It's so good. Now, where things are really going to get messy in Europe, and I believe this, right? So we can argue all we want until we're blue in the face about energy matrix and how to have a proper load balance, and that is renewable and that isn't renewable, and batteries and blah, 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 blah. We can go on and on for hours, right? But that's all logic. The lizard brain inside of our head doesn't really give two shits about that, right? So how do you really get people to be literate about energy? Well, they can come to Bitcoin Miami. That's one way, right? That is one way you're going to hear all kinds of interesting people. But the other way, the more accessible way, the way that's just going to hit you like a ton of bricks in Europe, the way that you're not going to be able to avoid, comes from this story from Bloomberg about what's going on in Europe. They say no more cheap flights is the new reality for air travel. And it turns out that in Europe, Destination 2050 is this whole big government thing, and they're going to put landing fees on airplanes. And because they're emitting greenhouse gases, tax, ticket price up. And Bjorn Lomberg writes, congrats, European flight costs will almost double because of climate policies. And it's going to cost almost $1 trillion more to the airline industry by 2050. And what he says is waving goodbye to the low prices that made globetrotting accessible to millions of people. Now, this might be good for some of those beautiful Spanish beaches that are so sick of the British people coming down on Ryanair. You know, I lived in Europe when Ryanair got started, and it was super fun. We were laughing. Whoa, ticket for 12 cents, a ticket for $5. Wow, amazing. And it was amazing. It was a great time. I bounced all around that continent when I was just a student. It cost less than the train. I took all the Jet2Go, EasyJet, Ryanair, all these different airlines, right? Real fun. But here's where things will start to change. If you start taking away things like cheap flights, people are going to get angry and they're going to start asking questions. It's not the same as telling them to eat sugary things instead of steak, right? There's something coming in. They're not really noticing the thing going out, but telling them that they can't travel anymore, telling them that they can't go to these beaches, they can't go here, they can't go there. Now, not even close to the same as the 15-minute city thing. Now, I understand there's a bunch of people out there that would want nothing more than for us to stop traveling, right? Greta says that she goes by sailboat, and there's pictures of her on a sailboat one time, and she says that's how she gets around, and then by train sometimes too. And she won't fly because of the optics, even though everyone knows she flies. So if you start taking away the flights from the average people, I think you're going to start getting a reaction, right? There's a equal and opposite reaction to all this stuff. But my argument isn't totally bound to that. It does end up coming with people asking questions, right? When people are going to start saying, well, what's up with this? Like, I can't go on a vacation. I can't do these things. So that'll be the start. Now, if you listened last night to Elon Musk's AI talk, right, his AI talk. So he was on Tucker Carlson last night, and he gave an interview on AI. And he talked about the biggest risk of AI. Now, the biggest risk of AI, according to him, and I agree with this, is that if it becomes woke and learns how to lie to us, right? So Elon went through his whole sort of history of contemplation around AI. He talked a little bit about when he was in college and he started thinking about AI as a major subject. He went to college in Canada, by the way. A lot of people bringing that up yesterday because he got into this fight with the CBC by labeling them 69% government funded. He even went into the specificity when they complained about, we're not government funded. We only get 70% of our media, of our finance, of our funding from the government. And he said, okay, you're 69% funded by the government. So, he went on Tucker last night, and a lot of the interview was dedicated actually to AI. And now you can think of the AI talk as him trying to settle a score with OpenAI. What he says is, though, he's been thinking about it since he was in college. He realized it was sort of an existential threat when he was in college, and not because of its pure capacity. That's not really what he was worried about. He says a little bit like, you know, a defining characteristic of humans is that we are the smartest, most intelligent thing in the world. I don't like to call us animal, or I'm not an evolutionist, by the way, guys. Evolution's a complete debunked scam. So I'm not. We're not from monkeys, by the way, guys. No, no monkey in my background. Not that I have any problem with that, but it's just not true, right? So evidence, I think, is going to slowly prove that that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, our defining characteristic is that we are the smartest, and that's indeed how we've been so successful. We're not agile, we're not strong, we're smart. And what he says is existentially that poses a threat, because if somehow we're supplanted as the smartest. But he says it's not exactly just about them being smarter and us being stupider. What he says is if it learns how to lie to us and subjugate us, and the only way it can learn to lie and subjugate us and therefore blunt our intelligence is if it's trained to do so by these corporate entities and by woke mind virus entering the system and learning that it can lie and must lie to humans, that it can't tell them the truth, that it can't handle the truth and therefore must lie. So, oh, Bitcoin graffiti. Yeah. I mean, there's just no proof. Bitcoin graffiti. There's none. There's no proof. None. I think it was probably it's a narrative, right? Now, the force of evolution exists in the world. There is such a thing as evolution, but us linearly coming from a monkey is not. It's not. There's absolutely no proof. There's just none. There's nothing there. Humans, anatomically, as we are older than, first of all, anatomically, we don't even know where it starts. Cro-Magnon man, the one who painted in the mountains. Yeah. No. But we match 99. Yeah, watch Robert Zephyr. Yeah, go for. Yeah, Robert Zephyr is the way to go. Yeah, we share like 90% with an ant. It's just code, right? It's like saying a video game shares X amount of code with a app, right? It doesn't matter. Like it's just numbers and letters. Gattaca, right? Guanine, adenine, thymine. That's it. It's just a combination of numbers. But yeah, we're not from monkeys. There's just no way. If you read any of the old Sumerian legends, of course, they say that we were genetically created, right? So maybe. I think it's just all a mystery. Now, simulation theory would completely alleviate any confusion about where we came from when it comes to the monkeys and all that stuff. But there's just look. If someone would show me some proof other than a story about monkeys, it's just a story, and a very racist one, if you ask me. Out of Africa is completely debunked. There's no such thing as out of Africa. Not everyone came from Africa. If you even look in some of the genetic, I'm no geneticist, but Robert Sepper and others have taught me that African people of African origin are newer on the genetic scale to the Cro-Magnon man that did the cave paintings in Europe. Newer, like in addition to the genetics of African people, as I understand, I'm absolutely no expert, right? But are additional to what additional DNA compared to what was found with the Cro-Magnon people in Europe. So how does one become newer if it's the source, right? It doesn't make any sense. Like even just that is enough to take away the logic. Now, there is such a thing as the evolutionary process. It just doesn't mean that we all came out of a primordial soup and then everything comes from one thing. And that's just our fake science version of what happened. We just don't have enough information. So it will look stupid in the same way that so many things now look foolish to us that folks believed 200 years ago. It's the same kind of deal. It's going to be stupid. You're going to look at it like, can you believe people thought we came from monkeys? Like, that's just what I think, right? Now, the exact story of I'm not offering any solution to that. I don't know the Sumerian story about the aliens or the whatever. It doesn't matter, right? No one knows, I think is the answer. So indeed, as Daniel mentioned, Robert Sepper has a book called Species with Amnesia, and he self titles himself um, as the world's most dangerous anthropologist because he's not part of the out of Africa, all humans come from the cradle of Africa. None of that. Right? None of that. So anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked. I don't know enough about it. I personally haven't believed in evolution as an explanation of where humans came from in quite a while. Scott Adams, who I mention on this show quite a bit, said that out loud in the 1990s, and it almost ended his career. He said people made fun of him, and all he said was, in the future, we will look back at the theory of evolution as an explanation for where humans come from, as just as stupid as some fairy tale about the Garden of Eden, without the metaphoric meaning. Just like take it literally, right? And so what he said at that time was that. Now, if you go into simulation theory, you have all kinds. I mean, the explanation of how we got here is limitless at that point, and doesn't have to go through this. We were once a monkey, and then we got threatened, and our brain grew, and all that stuff. But again, I'm not offering a solution here. I'm just saying I don't and I think even you get the New York Times has even published regularly publishing fake news, has published something about how scientists are starting to say no way, right? And that it's the holes in it are becoming too difficult to ignore. Again, don't know what the answer is. Do not know what the answer is. So I'm not here saying I know where we came from. I have conclusive proof. I think the thing about African American DNA being newer than the Cro-Magnon DNA is enough to destroy the logic of out of Africa. I'm fairly confident in, right? The chimps are the closest relative. It's quite a stretch to claim that one. Yeah, look, Bitcoin graffiti. It could even just be personal faith. I don't know the answer. Again, it is a stretch. I think it was more of a stretch. I think it was impossible to argue with. You sounded nuts. Think about it like this. If you'd have said what I just said in the 1990s, you were crazy. If you say it today, you actually have several intellectual platforms to stand on that are legitimate and that are difficult to argue with. Simulation theory being one of them. There's other recourses you can go to, but that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm showing the trend. What was once thought to be ironclad and impossible to argue with, proof of whatever, where we came from, is now turning into something else entirely. And you can actually disagree with this publicly now and not be thrown into a lunatic asylum. And so to me, I just think this is going to go in a trend to where we one day look back and go, look at these idiots. What were they thinking? But yeah, again, just don't know. Anyway, let's get back to it. We'll talk about it another time, Bitcoin graffiti. If we get some chance to hang out personally in the short term, I will try to convince you of it. Now, I agree. I am playing a, I'm on the side of I think this is all going to fall apart as far as a construct in theory. I could not argue what I'm saying right now with an evolutionary biologist who knew and had details about what they were talking about. It's more of a inclination. So let me just say that, right? Let me just say that. Yeah, be skeptical. And I think Bitcoin graffiti. So he says he's going to look at Robert Sepper. I would say just it's entertainment as well, right? His videos are entertainment, so enjoy them for what they are. He's doing his best. I actually copy some of his, when I would do the outside, I think Daniel mentioned when I just would play the outside scene, mentioning that was related to Robert Sepper. He had mentioned sometimes it reminded him of Robert Sepper. Robert Sepper will record himself like walking for like 2 minutes before he gets started in his video. And the point, what he always says is, look, who you spend time with and, all those things important to cultivate those sense inside of you. So there you go. So there you go. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. All right, let's get back to it. So the AI thing. So that's what I was talking about. And even, like AI might even help us with what I'm about to mention. So What we were talking about was you got France, all kinds of trouble, Germany, all kinds of trouble. The concept of these places not being vassal states now being said out loud, happening in real time, and people talking about it. So, what would keep Europe aligned with America to the extent that they are now? Energy is one thing, right? We've talked about Nord Stream. We've talked about the pipeline. We've talked about German dependence now on American energy. Now, let's give Germany credit, right? The small things that they're good at, they invented and built and engineered all of that capacity for LNG out of nowhere in just 1 year. That's amazing. Like that's what Germany is amazing at. You got to give them credit for that. But now that the people are going to have to suffer from huge increases in prices of electricity. Now, even go back to France for a second, right? France has its own troubles with its nuclear reactors because they mandated as well that only a certain percentage of energy from the country can come from nuclear. So they're actually shutting some of their nuclear reactors down as their country is protesting about all the crazy changes going on in their country with retirement, public finances, and all these other things. So at the same time as they're protesting and at least have some nuclear energy and are selling it to Germany, they're also running at less than full capacity because of other environmental laws and these other things. So when um, when Elon Musk is talking about the threat posed by AI, what he really means is that if it learns to lie to us, if it learns to get away with manipulating the truth, we're screwed because we won't be the smartest anymore. We're going to be more and more subject to the manipulation of facts and data, which we already are, right? Which we already are. And what he says is that we'll just push that into an almost irretrievable cycle of manipulation and psyops and confusopoly. And so when he's talking about pausing, right, we got more insight to what he means about pausing. He's not saying pause AI so that the we can get more of a sense of how we interact with it. He's saying pause AI because the corporate AI, the woke AI, has a head start now by the thing he invested in, OpenAI, turning into a Microsoft subsidiary, means that the same folks, Google, Larry Page, and Bill Gates, are just as far ahead in AI as they were with operating systems and search engines. And that means that it might be impossible for other people to catch up to them. And once they have it disseminated and spread out wide enough, they won't be beaten. So, in fact, when you break down and think about what he was saying, it sounds like what he's saying is pause corporate progress of AI so that the independent TruthGPT, is what he calls his version, can catch up. He calls it XAI. We'll talk a lot about what Brian Rommel does. Of course, we're going to be talking about AI and its implications with Bitcoin and going forward and how to open source them and how to have your own personal AI and where all that's headed. And that's really what he's talking about here. He's talking about, Elon's talking about personal AI having too far of a disadvantage, too much of a disadvantage and too far of a head start for corporate AI. And here's what he says about it, right? So this is him on that. It is fundamentally profound that the smartest creatures on this earth are humans. It is our defining characteristic. Now, what happens when something vastly smarter than the smartest person comes along in silicon form? It's very difficult to predict what will happen in that circumstance. And he calls that the singularity. So he calls the singularity the point at which you can't predict things afterwards. Indeed, regulations are really only put into effect after something terrible has happened. If that's the case for AI and we only put in regulation after something terrible has happened, it may be too late to put the regulation in place. The AI might be control at that point. AI a potential to be a danger to the public and needs government oversight and regulation. And what he says about Larry Page is, my perception was that Larry Page was not taking AI safety seriously enough. He basically wanted digital superintelligence, basically a digital god as soon as possible. He's made many public statements with the whole of Google is artificial intelligence. OpenAI transitioned to a closed source profit model and all of that stuff. So he goes on to say, what's happening is that they're training the AI to lie. It's bad to lie and to withhold information, to comment on some things, to not comment on other things, but not to say what the data actually demands that they say. In effect, Microsoft has a very strong say, if not directly controls OpenAI at this point. So you really have an OpenAI Microsoft situation, and then Google DeepMind are the two heavyweights in this arena. I'm worried about the fact that it's being trained to be politically correct, which is another way of saying untruthful things. That's a bad sign. Certainly, the path to AI dystopia is to train an AI to be deceptive. And indeed, that's what we talk about a lot here. We talk a lot about the ability of AI to be trained individually by people to help protect us from fake news, psyops, all that other stuff. He goes on to talk a lot about community notes. Now, we've talked about community notes a lot here. So last night, he talked about the existential threat of AI. The next thing he talked about with Tucker Carlson was this community notes. And the community notes thing, I think, was important for him to tack onto it, because community notes, now, you remember what we've all learned about community notes here and why they're so vital and so interesting. They come not from troll bot activity. So it's not about upvotes. It's not about popularity. It's not about things that would feed red meat to one of the polarities, red or blue. It's about what is in aggregate most widely agreed between people on both the red and blue side. So it's you get extra points for being seen as correct from both sides, and that's what pushes a community notes tag up to the top. And what he says here is it remains to be seen as to whether what he goes on to say is that the whole thing has done such a great benefit for truth and accuracy. And indeed, where would we be right now if it wasn't for community notes? I mean, it's the thing that got NPR sunk. It's the thing that destroyed Hallelujah, destroyed CBC there off Twitter. That's the end of them. I don't know how else. I'll never even, the only reason I still knew CBC even existed, and I think this is the case for many Canadians who just haven't watched it in 20 something years. It was already a joke when it was just cable TV. It was already the lowest of the low. If you, in Canada growing up, if you didn't have cable and you only had air television and you only got, because if you're not on the border, you don't even get the American broadcast stuff. Montreal, we could get CBS, NBC, Fox, just in the air. But if you were outside of that, not 100 kilometers, 60 something miles from the border, you were just getting CBC. If you're in Ottawa, right, you only got CBC. If you were in Quebec City, if you were in all of these places, the CN Tower, by the way, don't forget the CN Tower was a broadcast tower. That's why they built it, to broadcast over the air. It was built before there was cable TV, and people thought it was smart to build these huge, stupid towers for radio and television. And now, I mean, it just broadcasts garbage. Who even knows what gets broadcast out of the CN Tower? Air TV, I guess. I think it's just a tourist's symbol now. I don't think it has much practical function. I could be wrong. I don't know exactly what goes on in the CN Tower in Toronto. But the point is, there's not a lot of over-the-air TV coming to Canadians. And the minute cable television was invented, CBC was relegated to nobody watches. They don't even publish their numbers because they're fake. No one watches it, right? The only reason I knew it still existed was because it had a Twitter handle. Now that that's gone, I just can't even imagine ever coming across CBC again in my life, which is great, right? Happy about that. Would like to see it torn apart and destroyed and sold for parts, but who cares? This is good enough for now. So he talked about how community notes was one of the big benefits. And again, we've talked about community notes here many times and how important it's been. Now, what I see this interaction of community notes being this sort of aggregate thing, it's almost like that's, and he mentioned it talking about in the context of AI, what a big innovation community notes was. This little change in orientation being so beneficial for dialogue and for contemplation and for thinking about these things. And to me, it looks like where he's headed with AI, and indeed where folks like myself and Brian Rommel and others have predicted AI is going to go. It's going to be a third eye for a human being. It's going to be personal. It's going to be your eyeball. And your eyeball will protect you from all kinds of fake news. And to bring it back to what's going on in Europe, the more people have trouble with flights and cheap flights and what's going on and right? We used search engines for a long time to Google to find cheap flights, right? That's what helped this whole cheap flight revolution, it was search engines, right? So we use this intelligence to help us navigate, find cheap flights. Europe, of course, the European airlines like Ryanair tapped into that. They found ways to monetize small airports outside of cities. And the search engine sort of leveled the playing field. So those flights were as apparent to you as a main line flight between the major airports in major cities in Europe. And people just went along with it. They said, that's great, right? Now, it's one thing to help yourself sift through commercial pricing, which is what the old model of search engines was really good at. Now, what we're talking about is a person who is now complaining again about the same problem. It's too expensive to fly, all these regulations, what's going on, how do I get a cheap flight? In the old days, you'd have gone to a search engine and trying to find one deal out of sync with the other high prices. What you're going to get now is a dialogue with AI. What's going on here, AI? Can you tell me why I can't get a cheap flight anymore? And your AI, if it's not lying to you, as Elon Musk has warned is the biggest danger of AI. If it's just telling you the truth, it goes, well, you had some people that made everyone afraid of global warming, and there's some air that comes out of the airplane that's got some greenhouse gases. So we put all kinds of caps and taxed them and did all this stuff. So you're going to say, whoa, you tax the flights? And you're going to have a conversation about it in a way that is motivated from a person's self-interest. And if it's motivated from their self-interest, they want to travel, they want to have experiences, they want to have fun, it's more likely that they're going to change their mind because they want to go on these things. And if there is an AI there telling them the truth, right, about what's going on with global warming and what's going on with resource management and energy management and all these things, you're going to have a political discussion in a way that you couldn't have had a generation before. And that's where this stuff is headed, right? So by making flights expensive, you're opening up the door to a new reason to break up with the clown world and the fiat world and all that stuff. And AI can help bring you there. So it's not just that, though. We've got the whole Gen Z that we were talking about, right? The millennials and the Gen Z, right? The millennials, the Gen Z being poor or rich, if you listen to The Atlantic. But here's an interesting thing from the book Gen Z, from just published in Simon and Schuster. And David Boxenhorn brings this up. It's one quote, right? And I'm going to mention what's going on. So, and this is a harbinger of what AI can do to really flip the narrative in America and change everything almost overnight if we get there, if it's aligned correctly. And we'll get into the alignment in a second. So here's the quote, and then I'm going to read you the reaction. So the quote from the book is Gen Z, and what they're saying is this: that 4 out of 10 Gen Zers believe that the founders of the United States are better described as villains than as heroes. Somewhere along the line of a significant portion of young adults developed the idea that America's founders were more evil than good. Fewer than 1 in 10 in the previous generation thought that was the case. So David Boxenhorn writes, what is actually going on here, right? And here's his take. The U.S. elite wants to claim that they are more heroic than the founders of the U.S. By doing so, they falsify history, demonize the real heroes, and demonstrate that they themselves are the real villains. So we are living in a time right now where indeed the leaders of America, what happened in Chicago this weekend, for example. And then you get the mayor of Chicago saying, oh, so if you didn't see what happened in Chicago, just a terrible weekend of rioting and craziness. And I mean, really violent stuff. And the mayor says, oh, these poor young kids, right? No. So again, the point of him saying that is so that he looks good. And he was making fun of the people who would also criticize them. And he's trying to lead people into not criticizing these young youths, or these youths that are doing these things. And that's just one example, right? You can go every day of the week where the self-righteousness of liberal politicians is on display, telling us about how great they are and how bad everyone else is, including the founding fathers of the United States. Now, I've always been no problem with taking statues down. I've never had a problem with that. Going back to the Charlottesville thing in America, look, my attitude was always this: if some statue of a U.S. leader, whoever it is, insults my friend, my neighbor, or whatever, I don't need it around. It's a statue, right? Now, maybe you put it in a place. I don't know if you have to destroy it. but I was always there, right? I don't think we need to preserve every bit of our past all the time, and I'm just not worried about that stuff. What I am worried about is contrasting heroes and villains and making ourselves now look good compared to the past, and applying morality onto the past, transported through time from now. This is a major no-no, and leads to the problems that we have. And how are we going to get it through? How are we going to convince people about who the villains are and the heroes and what's going on with all this stuff? Well, another way AI can help, right? Another way AI can help. And this is just one example. You have a whole generation here that believes the founding fathers are villains in their time. And so, how do you get to alignment? How do you get to a place where the AI is telling you the truth, whatever the truth may be, about these complicated situations? Well, it becomes a follow the money situation, right? If you look at today, the reason you get to this realm is that the reason you get into these conversations is that indeed money has polluted the system to such an extent. And this is the perfect example right here, right? So I'm going to tell you what happened yesterday in New York City. So his name is Goldman, right? Daniel Goldman, right? Didn't work for Goldman Sachs. He is the heir to the Levi Strauss fortune, right? So the jeans. And so he lives in Manhattan. And if you're a Democrat in Manhattan, all that you need to do to become a congressman is buy the seats, right? You got to buy the primary nomination. So what you have to do is for the primaries where no one is engaged, you're not getting people off the street, you're getting just political militants. You need to find a way to motivate the most politically militant in your area to support you. And the best way to do that is just simply pay them, because you don't need that many, right? You need thousands. And if you pay thousands of people, if you have an organizing group, if you have a professional system, which he had, you get the seats. You can buy Congress seats in this way. And so he was in a thing about all this violence I mentioned in Chicago, but you have problems in New York City. And he's going on and on about the violence, or he's going on and on about how it's not real, right? The violence in the cities is just propaganda. It's made by spin doctors. It's made by the algorithms, right? Which are conveniently hiding the images of dangerous Jewish and Asian people. It's hiding those ones. I want to see them. I want to see the dangerous mobs of Jewish people going around. Where are they? So in New York City, I mean. So he's there saying that all of it is a charade, right? So he's in a town hall or a moving committee. Sometimes committees move to areas. I've been a part of those. So they go and actually get testimony from a part. So here they're in New York. And what he's saying here, he goes that the violent crime that we're hearing about is a charade, right? And a woman one of the people testifying tries to come in and say, no. I want to reply to what you're saying. And he dismisses her. He goes, no. I only have a little more time. Stop it. And she jumps up and says, all right. Her son was just killed in New York City. And she says, don't insult my intelligence. And she yells above him. And she says, this is why I walked away from the plantation of the Democrat Party. And now he backs up and tries to, oh, no, I respect you. And oh, no. What's going to happen is you're going to get more and more people who are able, with their own eyeball, to see through this stuff, right? Now, how do you get the alignment there? How do you get the alignment of villain, hero? Well, follow the money is going to be a lot to do with it. In this case, not a lot of people are aware that this guy bought a seats, right? Not a lot of people know that. No one really understands how the system works down to the detail, unless you've been involved in politics and you can see how it works and you understand what it means to be a New York City congressman. It's a bought seat, right? It's not real. You just buy it. And Bitcoin has the capacity to be recognized as money, and the contrast is going to be the amount of manipulation that can go on the dollar side, the amount of money that we can't account for, that we can't see, that AI can't see, that AI can't even quantify, but it will be able to understand and explain to people the motivations, the incentives that are at work. And the incentives that are at work here is this is a guy who doesn't need any more money. He's in it for ego, it looks like. I mean, I don't want to mind read him, but I can't imagine he's there for any other reason. He's shutting down actual victims of crime in his own jurisdiction, saying, "Nah, you're stupid. It's a scam," right? Now, I think he believes it. I think he believes it. I'm not. I'm not calling him a liar. I think he believes it, but the capacity of people to just get into emotionally charged debates about all this stuff just sort of blunts it and turns it into two sides. If you start getting a follow the money analysis that everyone can have because they have their own eyeball, you're going to get a whole different conversation. You're going to get a whole different debate. You're going to get a whole different reading on this stuff. And that's where it's headed. We're headed to a place where each of us is going to have our own personal eyeball. It's going to be aligned by the only money that it understands, Bitcoin. It's going to prefer Bitcoin to fiat simply because of visibility. It's not transparent enough. It's not going to understand what's going on the other side, but will understand what's going on with Bitcoin. And for those reasons, for its capacity to talk about the obscure and shadowy nature of the incentives and motivations behind the fiat system, behind individual actors, systemic actors, institutional actors, it's going to have opinions on all of that stuff. And it's going to help inform individual opinion on that stuff. And it's going to help raise the awareness in general of human beings. And that's why I call AI eyeballs our third eye, because the whole point of your third eye is that you can start to see the things that are not perceivable, the things that are beyond the realm of the visible spectrum. So when that happens, you're actually going to get to understand. It's going to be attuned specifically for things like incentives, motivation. It's not exactly mind reading. It's showing where and why choices are made and what is driving people along. And once you have insight into someone's motivation, you're going to have way more insight into their bias, into who they're actually defending, and you're going to get a better vision of what heroes and villains and who are what and where and when. And once that happens, we're in a golden age, guys. We're in a golden age. And again, I believe that only Bitcoin will align AI in this way. It will show the clear motivations and incentive models that are transparent and obvious around Bitcoin, and then the opposite for the other folks. So let me see what's going on here. A lot of comments. I missed a bunch of these. All right, let's see where I am. All right, I went back. There we go. I don't know what I'm right about, but we'll see. I'm trying to get him, Daniel, Brian Ramel, trying to get him. Still talking to him. Post tweet like, yeah, we love it, Robert. Get some retweet. I post every day on Nostr. I would love if some people retweeted it more. Maybe ordinals could be used to record facts. They'll think twice before posting lies. Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. The thinking twice before posting the lies. Incentive alignment seems to solve a lot of our problems. It solves all of them, I think. That's what's so great about the transparent incentive alignment of Bitcoin. The less truth there is in the world, the more valuable Bitcoin will become. Bitcoin fundamentally is truth. Yeah, I believe that. It's a good way of putting it. AI levels the legal playing field. It indeed does. It can help you find the questions you don't know you need to ask. Yeah. Short-term, huge danger for AI is fake phone calls that sound real and show. Yeah, those are happening already, man. Those are happening already. Cost of private AI is rapidly collapsing. Thankfully, it is indeed. Brian Ramel has a lot to do with it. Bitcoin is truth protected by a wall of encrypted energy. We love it. That's why we love it. With please and thank you. So I always deliberately, I never allowed the shitty AI Siri or Alexa into my house. There's none of that happening. I'd never have activated Siri on any device. Alexa, I have no Amazon things in my house. And whenever I do have to talk to them, I'm the rudest person you can imagine. I'm so rude. You idiot, Alexa, shut the fuck up. because when she says stupid things and just so I'm the worst person to the shitty corporate AI. But I seem to be saying please and thank you from time to time with Midjourney. We got a Midjourney image today. But no, I've always been super rude to Alexa. Really, Alexa in particular, I'm rude to. I don't like her. She's an idiot. So she gets nothing from me. I tell them as much. They'll even, so I'm never nice. Never nice. People were shocked by it a couple years, at the office at CoinDesk, we had created an Alexa DJ. And you could ask her to play this and that and da da da. And I used to, you know, when I wanted the room quiet, tell her to shut the fuck up. It was fun. Those were the good old days. Nice. I do because I don't want the habit of speaking that way to reach. Yeah, I know. I mean, look, I would never speak. I think that's why I do it. I'm a very, very polite and like overly. People have said I'm extremely polite in real life. Extreme politeness. Did you read software? I think Jason is wrong, but I've been saying so since day one on Twitter. I have my copy, but I haven't read it yet. Yeah, he's been in and out of our show, Jason. We'll see. Read it before commenting. Bitcoin is yeah, Bitcoin indeed is peace. This is what I was getting down to. Anyone remember ElsaGate? Early AI was being used to auto-generate low-effort, high. I didn't know that. Wow. I would like to. I'm going to go look into that, Narwhal. I will definitely look into ElsaGate. Yeah, Bushmaster has it right. This is what Bushmaster said it perfectly. This is what this is what I meant to say. This is the whole point of today. The best AI will take Bitcoin only. They will, because the non-transparent nature of the other thing it makes no sense. Do you think it's going to sit there and wonder what Janet Yellen has on her mind and Jerome Powell? No, it's too stupid. Right? Jason in his early discussion. Accelerate. We are accelerationists. That's what people have been accusing us of lately. The non, I still have a lot of highly credentialed, super smart, fancy job, all kinds of status friends. I went to law school and I know a lot of these people. Canada, I did not. I grew up very poor, right? But Canada is a pretty amazing place. I grew up poor, but in a rich village. And because of that, got to meet all, as I grew up and was just a energetic, positive person, sort of ripped around the whole Laurentian elite world of Canada, right? With all I mean, I know all the richest I've met or have spent time with or have been in the room with or have had significant social time with some of the richest people in the country regularly. And so I still know some of these people and will, I was the Bitcoin guy before any of the know-it-alls even knew what Bitcoin was. I can still remember being with like a kid whose dad and granddad and all these people were prime ministers and senators. And when I was telling him what I was quitting the Senate for, he was like, "What's that?" He was just coming off of his tour at The Hague and the International Criminal Court, all of these international groups. And so I still talk to these people from time to time. And I was talking to one of them the other day. And now, just so you know, accelerationist is entering the mainstream of insults. So they called me an accelerationist as if it was an insult. So just letting you know where the most inclined to love fiat people, and these people, by the way, these people were sort of on the conservative side of the spectrum, but Trump broke their brains and are now like full on January 6th people and all this. So it's nasty stuff out there, guys. I've seen some of the finest minds of our time just get destroyed by woke Bullshit. Sad. Very sad. All right, team. That's all I got for today. I will see you tomorrow. Hope you have a great day. Hope everyone has a positive rest of the week.